Hey guys, it's Jimmy Bremner from Copcast, Canadian Tactical Officers Association podcast, and today I have the privilege of having the former commissioner of the OPP, Chris Lewis, with us today. He's also a commentator on the news. I'm sure you see him quite often on CTV, and we're going to talk about a number of things. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jim. You?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well today.
That's good.
So again, I follow you on LinkedIn and in the news. And you see a lot of things, about leadership and leadership courses. But when I read the details, it seems to be more about management than it is about leading people. And I wonder if you have any comments on that.
Well, absolutely, I do. I've really been a student of leadership for years, right back to my teens. I've been a people watcher, and then as I started working and part-time in high school and after school, etc. I really started to see people that really made me want to be my best, and trying to understand why that was and why some turned me off so much was kind of part of just who I was as a person. And that, of course, came into my policing career, and I worked for the good and the bad, and I had strong feelings about what good leadership was and what it wasn't. And most often I was seeing what it wasn't. So that kind of continued as I got promoted, and me trying to be the best leader I could be and learning from my mistakes, because I made lots of them along the way. And I thought to myself, I'll never say that again, or I won't do that again. That didn't work very well, and on and on. So it's been a real passion of mine. And of course, I wrote a book on it, published it after I retired. And I'm not shamelessly promoting it because the proceeds go to Special Olympics Ontario through the torch run, and it's called Never Stop on the Hill. And I talk in there, Jim, about the difference between management leadership and how management is about things. It's about budgets and inventory and supplies and policy and on, where leadership is about inspiring people to be their best, to build a team, to build trust where you trust them and they trust you. And we all remember those leaders that we would take a bullet for. And conversely, we remember some we probably thought about killing. I could cite several of them. And I don't really mean that, but pretty close at times. But anyway, there's such a difference. And when you hear some people talk about leadership, they're talking about make sure they follow policy, make sure they don't go over on their expense accounts, and make sure the cars are filled and all that. All that stuff's important, but that's not going to inspire anybody to go out there and be their best 24/7 through some very difficult times. And we know what police officers are facing.
Yeah, and I think they're facing a tougher time now than they ever have.
For sure.
So for me, it was always about, understanding my people, and, a good leader recognizes that his teammates are probably more talented than himself in certain areas. So you exploit
Absolutely.
that and promote that. You see a lot of managers jumping on courses that their team members should have.
For sure.
Because you want to promote those individuals. And humbly, I say a lot of people, former chief of Toronto Police, actually came through ETF with me, and I've had the opportunity to mentor Mark Saunders. So
yeah.
So it's really at this point in my life rewarding to see how many people moved ahead. And I was happy to stay the team leader. Came in as a PC, went out as a PC. But I think it's really important that you never ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do yourself.
For sure.
And, you've got to fall on the sword, to support your team, right? That's
right on. And so many people, if you ask them, and I asked thousands of people in the OPP to tell me about the best leader they ever worked for and what it was they did. I didn't want names, but just tell me generally about the best person, what it was they did to make them a good leader, and then tell me about the worst. And what it was they did that made you want to quit. Didn't inspire you at all. And I did a blog on the OPP's website, internal website, and I had 12,000 hits on that blog in 2.5 weeks. All the topics that I brought up in that blog, should we carry guns off duty, and different things are very controversial, tattoos and different things. I never had nearly, not even 400 or 500 hits in 2 weeks, let alone 12,000. And the sorts of things I heard then, and I still hear when I speak and I talk to crowds, is they didn't know me, they didn't care about me, didn't even know my name. It was always about them and never about us. We had lots of great ideas, but they wouldn't listen to them, and on about the bad leaders, where the good leaders made me feel good about myself, give me a kick in the rear when I needed it, but did it in a way that I didn't want to quit. Were there shoulder to shoulder with me in good and bad times, would take the hit and pass on the good news, pass on the praise, and on and on. And when you think back to those leaders you and I both worked for, and I could probably name some in your department you worked for that were good and bad, and vice versa, those things all resonate with us because they had an effect on us as people, because it was all people skills that made them or broke them, not their ability to manage a budget, no policy, shoot a gun well. Did you ever say the best boss I ever had in my life really knew policy well?
Oh, no, not at all.
Never. Absolutely. We all have those examples. And so does every single person that's listening to us chat right now.
Well, in your statement there, I find it interesting that you'd have that many hits. Clearly people want to talk, but they feel that they're unheard, or what they're talking about won't go anywhere.
For sure. And it struck a nerve is the way I kind of put it. And because number one, they were asked, and they could do it anonymously if they chose to. I mean, if they said something stupid like, I'm going to come and kill you, we could find out who it was, but that wasn't the point. And people were very open and said, I work for an idiot right now that treats everybody like crap, and on and on. And sometimes I could kind of tell who it might be. You can sort through it all, but not all 12,000 people commented, but 12,000 people looked at it and read it and revisited it, and lots commented, man, from crusty old sergeants that didn't care because they're on their way out the door, to secretaries that had never been asked ever because they were civilians how they felt about the organization. And so it was real telling for me.
Right. So I also wrote a book, and it's called Crack in the Armor, and it's about my experience with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And also when you post, I noticed that you have a lot of empathy for officers that are struggling. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely. And I've been preaching for years in a leadership position that our people deserve the best in help and supports and programs, and we have to recognize and have open dialogue and all those things. And then for 40 years, I never told anybody what I was dealing with myself. Yeah. And I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD till after I retired, because I never went to a doctor or a therapist or talked to anyone about it. So I preached one thing and I did another myself. But I was a member at our True team for a number of years, the early 80s, and then I was in charge of all the teams, and then I was a homicide and different things where I certainly went through all the traumatic things that you and others have been through in their careers, maybe less, maybe more, with some officers, who knows. But the bottom line is, as a human being, I suffered through all of that, and I never wanted to put my hand up and admit it. And so trying to encourage others to come forward, and then giving them the proper help, and not getting rid of the stigma, and all of that has been a real goal of mine. And I'm currently writing another book, and I don't know whether I'll ever publish it, but it's really about, I hate the word for some reason, resilience, because I think it gets overused, but really about my own struggles and staying strong and trying to be what I thought I should be and as good as I thought I should be, but never really did feel that I was as good as I should be. Some self kind of deprecating thoughts in my own mind, and on and on. And so I've got very strong feelings about it, Jim, and we had never done enough. As much as I tried, we didn't do enough when I was there. And I know a lot of change and funding has come from government to make it better in the OPP, to use that example. And there's still challenges. There's still officers committing suicide. And so, it's one of the toughest things in policing, I think, that we faced as a profession, and all through the years, bigger than guns and gangs and all the other crap we've had to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, we're in more danger from ourselves statistically than we are from the bad guys, and that's statistically proven on a yearly basis.
Absolutely.
Now that said, you talked about you're careful about the word resilience. I used to do a lot of talks about PTSD in my experience, and I have to tell you that I kind of shy away from it now, because I think in some ways it's become disingenuous. It's almost become a business unto itself. And some people are saying things that probably are not as helpful as it could be. And frankly, when you talk about resilience, as I get older, what I notice, all the cliches that my parents would say to me, like, you got to get back on that horse.
Yeah.
They were right. And resilience, people that are resilient, it's based on not how many times you fall down, but how many times you get back up.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think the message for somebody, if you're going out there and you're speaking about your experience, it's like, in spite of the pitfalls, I'm here now.
Yes.
There are success stories, and I think it's become a bit of a pity party, and I don't mean to be,
I agree.
Abrasive with that statement.
And that's one of the reasons I've been reluctant to even have a book published. And I'm only kind of halfway through the rough draft anyway. It's been going on for years. I found it somewhat cathartic to write it.
Yeah.
And at times I had to walk away from it because I was actually talking about real incidents. And I didn't want it to make it about me, but at the same time, I want to tell the world that I didn't seek help. And just by more good luck than good management, somehow or another, I'm here today. And there was times, to be very frank, the first time I ever said this on camera, there was times I almost didn't make it.
Oh, I've been down the road.
Yeah. And it's very concerning and troubling. And sometimes I get emotional even trying to talk about it to anybody. And I didn't want anyone to think, oh, look at Chris, he's looking for sympathy. And so I'll undoubtedly donate the few dollars it does make to a charity anyway, because I don't want people to think I'm trying to, benefit from this in some way. And that
I don't
think concerns me.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be a consideration you have to worry about. It is cathartic, and there are times that you have to walk away from it. I think
I'm in therapy now.
Yeah, so I do it all.
After I leave here today, I'm meeting with my therapist, Sam.
I have a great guy, and his name's Sean O'Brien. He won't mind the plug. He's a great guy. He's one of the best, and we're pretty much friends now. Because I've been seeing him for such a long time. He's a great guy, and for me, it's cognitive behavioral therapy is a great, really helpful thing to do. So. Let me move on from that.
If I could just one quick thing,
please,
Jim. Yeah.
Please.
And one of my thoughts is too, if there's a young Jim Bremner or a young Chris Lewis out there right now in policing somewhere that can learn something from our experiences in terms of helping them get the help they deserve and they need, and saving them from the years of torture and self-doubt and and feeling like a failure that many of us have been through, that's a good thing. And so if it helps one person, it's a good thing. But I know some of the old detractors say, oh, look at what's Lewis talking about now, and so that bothers me. But at the same time, I don't want to let it stop me from passing on what I think are really important messages.
Well, I think it's probably easier for high achievers to feel that they're, not doing enough, right? I think it's something that we it's a burden we carry that we probably don't have to, now.
That's true. Yeah.
That said, right now we've got a lot of officers that are just leaving the job. They're burnt out. Maybe they're not asking, or they're not getting the help that they are looking for. I know that I believe I read something last week where Halifax has lost over 100 officers within a period of 3 months. And I know that Timmins recently was offering a $40,000 signing bonus to get officers to come to Timmins, Ontario. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that a leadership problem?
I think 9 times out of 10 it is. I think the last year and a half have been in Canada with the number of officers that have been killed, the shortfalls staffing wise in some departments, those have been huge contributing factors. And then the anti-police rhetoric on social media, doesn't matter what the police do, obviously it's wrong and blah, blah, blah. That's all part of it. But I think leadership can get officers through the tough times. And a lack of leadership just leads to a total breakdown of morale and people not caring anymore. They don't feel supported. They don't feel understood. They don't feel they have a say. And I really, truly believe that's the big part of the issue. When you look at Halifax, for example, do they have staffing problems there? I don't know. Many departments do. And I don't know the chief there. I know it came from Ontario. But there was a vote of non-confidence there that was huge. It was like 90-some% voted that they weren't confident in his leadership. So something needs to change there. Is that would have to be a huge wake-up call from your leadership style. I know Chief Saunders went through it in Toronto. He went through a non-confidence vote. These things aren't binding, but they certainly reflect the feelings of a large number of officers. And so leadership is big. And I truly think that leaders can get the people through the toughest of times. And even in the best of times, weak leaders will fail and the organization will fail because the leadership just isn't there to inspire people to do and be their best.
Do you think something, law enforcement agencies, big ones, have become corporations now? Do you think that's taken some of the human element out of it? I remember, obviously, we've had some, there's shootings every day in the GTA.
Yeah.
And we've had some bystanders struck and unfortunately killed recently. But I remember, back in my day, the chief would come out and reassure the citizens. They would at least show up at the scene and say the officers in law performance of their duty, and we're going to do something here. Not only, in my opinion, the chief is a representative of the security of the civilians in the city, but we're not seeing that anymore. And I don't know if that's because they're afraid they might say something that might lead to a lawsuit, but it just seems to me that they should be more front and center than how difficult is it to go to all the police divisions in Toronto and when you become the chief and say, hi, this is me.
Yep.
And we're starting over, or I like what you're doing. How can I support you?
Yeah, they have to hear that, and the folks have to know it's genuine, as opposed to, oh, here we go again. In Toronto, it's a huge job. For me, at the OPP, with 1 million square kilometers of turf, it was a never-ending job. With 300 and some detachments, and it was big. But I had to make my best effort to do it. It was tiring. It was exhausting. But they needed to see me. They needed to see me laugh, smile, have a coffee, be open to discussion and open to criticism and open to suggestions. And if you don't do that, you're failing your people. And it's at the same time, as you suggest, if you're not doing it for the public, they don't know who their police chief or commissioner or local commanding officer is. And it's important that people look up and say, okay, here he is or here she is. And they're going to get us through this just like they did last time. And to not do that's a total failure of leadership. And I think what we're seeing out of a lot of police leaders now, and some don't like when I say this, because there's many wonderful ones out there. You wonder sometimes if just good luck or good management that they rose to the top, but some great ones do, and they get it. But others don't want to hear the fact that you should be talking to your people. You should be building trust. The public needs to see you in good times and bad. And all those things, they go, well, who the hell does he think he is telling me that? Well, nobody sees you. And working for CTV like I do, I see all the local officers do their press releases. I see what chiefs speak up and what chiefs don't. And so it's pretty quick to see when they do show up and they want to talk about themselves and read their resume out. That wasn't the question. And it certainly makes you doubt whether or not they have any trust among their people when you hear that. Or you hear them say, well, my officer's this and my division's that. And I made sure we assigned our best to this. Come on, you're in bed sleeping when it happened. Just say, hey, we got our best people on this, as we always do. And they're working together with the other divisions and units. And we're going to get through this together and keep you safe and, build that trust and not make it look like it's all about me. I'm here to save you. But at the same time, you being there, if you built the trust of the public and the officers, is going to give people the impression you are going to save them because you're a person of your word and you're honest and you have integrity. And we don't always see that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been pretty lucky in my career, and I got to travel and build teams throughout the province in Canada. And it's funny when I go into the smaller jurisdictions, you'd go into the cafeteria and you'd see the chief of police of whatever small service that might be.
Yeah.
And guys would, officers from that jurisdiction would, say to me, like, what do you think of your chief? I said, it's like the Queen. I'm never gonna meet the chief. Like I'm not going to have that intimate contact over coffee as you do on a daily basis. So it's a little bit different. Again, when you're in a larger service, then I think it's easier to feel left out.
For sure.
Well,
just the cafeteria. And I think of Forty College. I think of the OPP headquarters. Big cafeteria. There's always people in there that work there or there on business or courses or whatever. And to go in there as commissioner, and Fantino did it too in the OPP, and just go sit at a table with a whole bunch of recruits that are shitting themselves because the commissioner is actually looking and talking to them, but having a laugh and talking. Hey, where are you from? Oh, your dad. I remember your dad. He used to work in Kenora. And kind of creating that wow. And so when you walk away, they don't fear the next time they will see you and run out of the back door of the detachment when you show up, because they think, I talked to him and he's a good person. He actually cared what I thought. He remembered my dad, and creating those kind of bonds is so important.
So
not everybody does it.
I'm just something just occurred to me. Obviously, we're law enforcement's down in numbers everywhere we look, right? We went from, in my day, we had about 10,000 uniformed officers in the city of Toronto, and 9 to 10, I believe. And we're down to about 4,700 now, if I'm not mistaken. So where I'm going with this, when we cooperate on G20s, we have joints. Is there a way that like the OPP could help Toronto, or is there too much politics involved there? Is there like the way that, our cars can run out to Durham and help them with the situation, or to Peel? Or is there not a way that we could be more cooperative with one another?
Absolutely. I mean, all the joint forces operations and special units, whether it be ROPE and all of that, drug squads and intelligence, and they generally do work together. On the front line is where often the shortages are. Those that are in a car going to calls and trying to protect the public. And that's where the challenges lie. And there's been a lot of kind of turf wars between the OPP and smaller departments, which is really sad, because we'd always get called and we'd always help them. And then they didn't want to call because it would look like they need our help. Yeah. We never got a lot of calls from Toronto unless there was something big, like the ice storm in Toronto some years ago, and power outage. And we had hundreds of people in helping, and that's the way it should always be. But the OPP's down too. They're down hundreds and hundreds of officers across Ontario. And now government's announcing a lot of special units, which is great, in addition to ROPE and enhancement to ERT and full-time ERT instead of part-time ERT and on and on. That's all wonderful, but those bodies are coming from the front line, and someday they'll be replaced. And so everybody's hurting. And if there was a way to better work together so we could feel less pain as a group, that'd be wonderful. I just don't know whether politics will allow some of that.
So let me ask you this. I get to work in the United States, and I go out with teams in the United States, and sometimes the chief of police is in the lineup with me. Typically,
he's one of the only 3 officers working that day,
right?
In some departments,
but what I'm getting at is, typically in Canada, once you reach the level of staff sergeant, you're not likely to be out on the front line enforcing the law for the rest of your career. Is that really what the public's paying for, or should we have another way of? Do we have a problem with numbers or a deployment problem?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think police have become the catch-all response to a lot of socioeconomic issues where communities don't have enough people working with the homeless, with addiction, with mental health in the community, et cetera. So the police end up being the fallback. Okay, we'll call the cops then. We've got to get this guy out of here. We've got to get that tent down to get him off this property. And so a lot of that and cybercrime and all these things that have arisen in terms of demands on police, but all the basic stuff never went away. And some of it increased because, like I said, of the shortfalls in social service agencies and whatnot. And so I think the work far outweighs the number of staff and policing. So a lot of changes need to happen to balance that out. But you're right in that, as a uniformed staff sergeant, when I think back in the OPP, I can name several uniformed staff sergeants around Ontario that would be out on calls. I remember a uniform inspector running past officers that were chasing a stolen car suspect in the field, and they said, "Who the hell was that just ran by the white shirt and a gun?" But
Was that you?
No, actually, you know what? It was a guy. It was a guy named Mike McDonnell. I used to stop all the time and help officers when I was traveling, but a guy named Mike McDonnell came from the Mounties and came to us as an inspector, and no one in the detachment knew him yet until they saw him running across the field faster than them. Former tactical guy, he was part of CERT in the RCMP and a solid officer. But there are other Mike McDonnells out there.
But see, now we're back to leadership, aren't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Right,
And some leaders are so busy that it's tough to get away from the day job to go out and do stuff, but they have to make the effort too. And I didn't have time to go out and visit 350 detachments in Ontario.
Yeah,
I didn't, but I had to make the time, whether it be on weekends or whatever. Otherwise, I was failing the people.
Yeah. Well, there's lots we can speak about. I just finish with this. I'm a young officer, and I'm moving up the food chain. Are there books I should read? Are there people I should watch? How do I become a leader?
Well, Never Stop on a Hill by Chris Lewis is a real good book on leadership.
I heard that.
Yeah. I think that the important thing is for young officers is watch the leaders they work with and for, and look at the ones that make them feel good about themselves and inspire them to be their best, and watch what they do and what they say and how they do it and say it, and then try to emulate that. And then watch the ones that make you want to quit, that never talk to anybody, that grunt, fart, go in their office, scratch themselves, and never come out and help or talk to anybody. There could be a fight in the office, they wouldn't come out and even grab somebody by the arm to help, and don't do what they did, because they're perfectly good bad examples. Watch what they do and don't ever do any of it, and you'll be better on this job, and you'll be a better leader. Learn from the good, learn from the bad, and just try and be honest and open and helpful to everybody around you, and you'll emerge as a leader.
That's great advice. Again, there's many things we could talk about. I'd love to have you back and talk about gangs and youth and what's going on out there, what we can do. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.